my tips on coping with trauma. Some of my tips on coping with trauma. So, of course, we're all aware of so much that's going on in the world, in our communities, and our neighborhoods, whether it's upscale, high, middle class, or in the lower class areas, of course. So, everyone's actually going through something in today's time. It's like no one is exempt. No part of society is exempt. And so, we have to have some type of way of healing, even through the midst of all the trauma that we're all experiencing. And the importance of that is, if everybody is scarred in society, then what type of society are we living in? Are we a part of? Right? But at the same time, we can't worry about all of society. We got to worry about ourselves and what we could do for ourselves. Because the saying goes, if you can't help yourself, you can't help anyone else. And the saying is true. So, one thing that we've got to do is be able to distance ourselves once we've gone through a traumatic situation or event. A traumatic event is something that causes shock to the body, shock to the mind. It could be a car accident. It could be violence of any sort. It could be failing something like an exam that you studied so hard for, which takes use of the mind. So then you have, it would be mental stress, but depending on your mental strength, it could be mental trauma. Sometimes an accident itself could cause mental trauma. Slip and fall, a concussion, mental trauma. So what we have to do is also mental trauma, a traumatic memory. You may have seen something traumatic and it left an effect on you mentally. You may have seen a car wreck. You may have seen the aftermath of the car wreck. You may have seen a shooting. You may have seen the aftermath of a shooting. You may have seen a hiking accident. You may have seen the aftermath of a hiking accident. So these are things that qualify as a traumatic event. And the thing that we've got to do to get over trauma is to come to the realization that you just went through a traumatic event and somehow survived. The first thing is to realize that you survived. The second thing is to realize that at some point you're going to go through survivor's guilt. But we've got to get through survivor's guilt. We got to put ourselves in a position where we can think without so many voices in the background. So at some point you're going to have to remove yourself from the circle if you have one, because they're really not going to be able to understand the traumatic event that you've just experienced unless they were in it with you. As much as they might want to help or assist, it's almost not going to be possible without professional help or without God. When you have outside assistance, it's like luxury. But the core of what you need is within yourself. So you got to take some time to yourself and remove yourself from the things that you're used to, the environment that you were in, that you experienced the shock in. Because what happens is the trauma. You have to remove yourself from the environment that you experienced the trauma in. Because the trauma brings shock to your body. It brings shock to your mind. It's like the body and the mind were caught off guard, so to speak. And there's almost no way to prepare for trauma. So you have to be able to, one way to heal is to remove yourself so that you don't, because what comes with trauma is anxiety. So you want to be able to remove yourself from the environment or the type of situation that may have brought you this trauma. You want to be able to remove yourself so that your body and your mind can heal from the shock of it all. Trauma brings shock. And so, once you're able to kind of think to yourself, gather your own thoughts, you may come out with a game plan on how to remove yourself permanently from the situation in case you aren't in position at that time. And then if you are in position at that time to remove yourself, you're able to think about what type of situation you want to put your new self in. Whereas though you don't experience something like this again, if it's in your power. If it's not in your power, say it might have been a car accident or something and you can't stop driving. So you just have to kind of like get back on the horse and keep going. But there's a process to getting back on the horse to keep going. The process are steps of healing. And another one is to renew your mind. To sort of start thinking and listening to something different. Things that'll bring you positiveness on the inside, things that'll make you feel positive, things that'll get you motivated to get up every day and get out every day and work towards your mental therapy every day and work towards your physical therapy every day. The music you listen to, the content that you watch, the streaming content that you watch. Everyone doesn't have the capacity to do everything. So we have to stay within our capacity level because only you know what you produce on the inside. So you are aware of the fact that you need to listen to positive individuals and less let's say reality television, less reality music. And listen to and watch things more that I'm not sure what it could be for your situation or what you like or what you don't like. But what I do know is what is a distraction. And so I'm just trying to steer you out of the way of listening to and watching distractful content that is not therapeutic for your mental healing. Everything is about mental healing. The next step, get to know God in some capacity, in whatever capacity that you can start at. Get to know God. God has so many characteristics and personalities. Individuals think that they have to wait until they're an old age, or wait until they become a nice person, a nice to the earth, a nice-hearted individual, when in fact, God has so many personalities that God's going to accept you where you answer your call at. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, so you have to really start to just pick up. And it doesn't take you to get right with God. There's no such thing as getting right with God. You've got to know, if you're born and you get to wake up the next day, you're right with God right there. So it's time for you to get right with yourself, and the things that you're trying to accomplish mentally and physically is going to take the power of God. Physical trauma starts in the mental as far as healing concerned. As far as healing is concerned, physical trauma has to begin with mental healing. And so, with mental healing is a renewed attitude, a realistic attitude about what you've just went through and what your options are as far as surviving. There's a lot of, violence going on in America, in this country of America. There's a lot of violence going on in other countries. There's a war going on. And so the level of trauma is at an all-time high in the world. And another tip. These tips aren't in a specific order because, as we all are aware, I'm not like a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm just giving you some tips on how I've been able to survive the trauma that I've experienced in my lifetime. Another tip I would say is you got to stay away from individuals who have not meant you any good in the first place, in the beginning of something. That don't feel like your traumatic situation is going to make an individual have some type of sympathy for you, and then you're going to be able to go to them for some type of assistance mentally or some love. They're going to treat you the same way they've continued to treat you. But what's going to happen is you're going to, in turn, it might have an effect on your mental health up to that point, as far as disappointment. So don't feel sorry for yourself and then start to want individuals to show sympathy or empathy towards you, because it could be a trap for yourself. The letdown. The healing is within yourself. The healing is what you let into your system. Your gateway. What's your gateway? You got to be able to locate your gateway and say, okay, if I watch this or do this or entertain this, or if I'm in this crowd or in this circle, if I go to this event, these things are going to affect me. They're going to affect my anxiety level. Your anxiety level is like a cast. You've got to keep it safeguarded until the healing, and then you can take the cast off. But you've got to keep your mind safeguarded like a cast for a certain amount of time. Anxiety is like throwing salt on the wound. So if you keep putting yourself in positions that bring anxiety, these things are like putting salt on a wound, and your healing process takes that much longer. Certain situations, we're in situations where we have to stay where we are. We can't leave. We can't relocate. These are the times where I would say God is important. These are the times I would say God, your relationship with the Father who created 100 billion galaxies, 100 billion universes is important. God is your protector. God is your cover. God is your refugee. So it's important that you understand that the traumatic situation you went through at the point of you being alive is due to God. So you've got to kind of go to God and ask what the answers are. Everybody's traumatic situation is unique. It's different. But you've got to keep yourself around a positive circle, the circle who was for you before the traumatic event. The circle who cares about your life, your spirit, and your soul. Anyone less than that is not going to be good for your healing of yourself. Your anxiety level will always be high. You want to keep yourself around individuals that you can trust. And if you don't have anyone that you can trust, yourself is the first one that you should be able to trust over any and everybody. Yourself. And that's cool if you just keep yourself around yourself. As long as you know you can trust yourself. Like I say, you just put yourself in a position where you can think and get some thought. You can hear yourself think. A lot of times when you're in a circle of individuals, it's hard for you to hear yourself think or hear the ideas that come into your mind. Like, you might receive them, but then you'll forget them. You don't have time to put them in your phone. You don't have time to jot them down. You know? Put yourself in a position where you could just think somewhere different. If you're used to a peaceful spot, then put yourself in a peacefuler spot. So these are some pre-tips of how to get through trauma, the healing, change your environment. Separate yourself for a little bit. Take a separation, like a vacation, from the individuals that you're dealing with for a little while, so that you can just free your mind, just get some different thoughts and put yourself in a different position. It's necessary for your healing so that you begin to find out who you are and what you need. The mental bandages that you need. You might need mental bandages. A lot of trauma that individuals go through, I haven't even really got into the physical part, not the physical part, but the professional part of, sometimes you might have to go talk to a professional. A lot of times We feel like we don't want to tell strangers our problems, but to be honest with you, a stranger might be the most potent person that you can talk to, because of the fact that individuals that you know might judge you. They're not professional. They don't know how to show empathy and sympathy. A professional does, but what a professional doesn't hold back is emotions. They've a lot of times not been through the life that you've experienced. A lot of times you're beating a dead horse when you're talking to an individual who's been through a battle or war, and you're like, you've been wounded. It's like, okay, like I'm blessed to be alive. Like, I'm standing here talking to you. So sometimes this type of advice is, you need a little bit more, and you got to be able to understand when it's time to when you've exhausted all possibilities, and you might just need to talk to a professional. But what you do is, you don't talk to any professional. You have to research the professional that you talk to. You have to look and see what their record is, as far as their reviews and things of this nature, and do they have any lawsuits against them, and what do the individuals that they've counseled have to say about them and their services. So you've got an option, a network of options professionally that you could use as well. And a lot of times we need to talk to professionals. The individuals who we talk to in our personal lives sometimes scar us. And it's not on purpose, unintentionally. They just, like, we've all been through something, so they didn't talk to anybody. So we can't get mad at individuals who don't have the professional license to help us. We've got to go to the individuals and take an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to talk to somebody who isn't going to be able to go back and spread my business in the neighborhood. I'm going to go and talk to somebody who isn't going to be able to go and spread my business at the job. I'm going to go and talk to somebody who isn't going to be able to spread my business in the family. Sometimes these types of things are needed, but we're not always aware of this because of the culture that we grow up in. And so we look down on going to talk to somebody about our personal business and not being able to get through it. But what goes on is a continuous cycle of mental trauma that is harder and harder to get into,
to get out of.
There are levels to trauma, and sometimes a traumatic event, the second level doesn't hit you for a couple of months, and then you're wondering what's going on. Like your life is you're going through a lot. Your anger level is up. Your anxiety level is always high, so you're always on the combat, on the lookout. So it's sometimes good to go and talk to a professional if you have the insurance, if you have the job, to be able to have the insurance to be able to talk to someone. If you don't have the job or have the insurance, then this is where God comes in. That God comes in at every level. But what I'm telling you is, God comes in certainly when you only have yourself. A lot of times when you do get counseling, you'll go to God as well. When you're not in counseling and things of that nature, you'll start to have a clearer mind, and you'll go to God. But sometimes you can't afford counseling. So that's where God comes in at, because God gives you sense and common sense. God is counseling. God created the counselor. Traumatic events actually bring you closer to God. And so, like I say, it's just a lot of violence going on, and we got to learn how to be healers to ourselves and healers to those around us, because we all have responsibilities, and traumatic events don't always go away mentally, but you're able to compartmentalize, and that's important. Alright, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to Motivational Life Global. I appreciate all the support. I'm your host, Mike. Motivational Life Global.